On August 12, 1743, a mining crew led by foreman Stepan Chernyshov was working at a depth of 85 meters in the Zminogorsk mine when their pickaxe broke through a thin stone partition and revealed a void. Through the opening, a blast of cold air rushed out, carrying the smell of dampness and something else unfamiliar that made the workers step back. After widening the breach, the miners discovered a gallery tall enough for a man to stand in, with a vaulted ceiling that disappeared into darkness in both directions. The walls of this passage weren't natural, but worked stone, and so precisely fitted that you couldn't slip a knife blade between the blocks. Chernyshov ordered 2 workers to descend into the gallery with torches and examine the find, but they returned pale after just 15 minutes. They reported that the corridor extended downward at an angle for at least 100 paces, and in one section they'd spotted signs of human habitation, remains of hearths, and strange symbols carved into the stone. The discovery was immediately reported to mine superintendent Ivan Beer, who descended that same day to personally inspect what had been found. After the inspection, Beer ordered that no one be informed of the discovery, temporarily sealed the passage, and sent an urgent report to the mining authorities in Barnaul. 2 weeks later, a 3-person commission arrived and spent 3 full days underground studying the find. Only one phrase from the superintendent's report has survived regarding this incident: "Signs of ancient workings of undetermined origin discovered. Further study required."
This incident at the Zmenogorsk mine was far from unique in the mining history of Altai in Siberia. In recent decades, more and more evidence has emerged of an extensive network of underground structures penetrating the territory from the Urals to eastern Siberia. According to some accounts, these constructions connect distant regions across distances exceeding hundreds of versts, and their origin sparks heated debates among specialists. Despite how fantastical such claims may seem, archival documents from mining operations contain numerous mentions of such discoveries. We live in a world where the boundaries of possibility are constantly expanding, and the most incredible hypotheses sometimes find unexpected confirmation. An interesting detail is documented in mining authority directives from the mid-18th century, when a strict order was issued to seal certain deep levels in several major excavations. This directive concerned mines in the Altai and Urals, and its reasons remain unclear to this day. Even in earlier times, travelers and chroniclers mentioned encounters with inhabitants of underground spaces in their records. For example, medieval sources describe trade with mysterious settlers from the depths who exchanged metal ingots and gemstones for grain, oil, and cloth. But what caused the authorities in the 18th century to change their attitude toward these contacts and begin large-scale sealing of passages?
There's an extensive collection of written testimonies describing representatives of the underground population as people of short stature, stocky build, and adapted to work in conditions of limited light. However, the actual classification of deep dwellers is far more complex than commonly believed. At the lowest levels, at depths exceeding 400 meters, there existed population groups that almost never ascended to the surface. They avoided daylight, had distinctive physical characteristics, and according to descriptions, differed greatly from surface inhabitants. At middle horizons, depths from 100 to 300 meters, were located those very settlements mentioned in trade records. Besides these, according to individual accounts, various transitional groups were encountered, occupying intermediate tiers. Why did the inhabitants of underground levels begin to cause such concern among mining authorities starting in the mid-18th century? According to preserved documents, mine superintendents repeatedly recorded instances of contact between workers and the population of the depths. This phenomenon was perceived as a threat to the established order and control over precious metal extraction. One theory suggests that authorities feared the uncontrolled spread of information about rich veins that might have been known to the native inhabitants of the lower horizons. According to individual testimonies, between 1743 and 1746, an unofficial agreement was reached between representatives of the mining department and the elders of underground communities regarding the demarcation of zones of influence. Under the terms of this agreement, certain horizons were allocated exclusively for state development, while deeper levels remained with the native population of the depths. Ritual sealing of passages was conducted in the presence of witnesses, with representatives from both sides participating. However, trade exchange of resources continued according to established rules through specially maintained contact points at neutral horizons. After a certain incident that occurred in 1746, the details of which haven't survived, management made the final decision to completely cease all interactions. Orders were issued that all known passages, including exchange points, be reliably sealed with massive stone barriers, and those who continued unauthorized contacts faced severe punishment, up to exile to distant mines. A final meeting was held at which the parties agreed to close all gates and completely cease official contacts. Thus, in the territory of Altai, the Urals, and adjacent regions, most known passages between 1746 and 1748 were blocked with 3 rows of brick masonry. Documents from the Kolevan-Voskresensky factories preserve reports on the importance of such measures for preventing conflicts and ensuring stability. Similar directives were introduced somewhat later in Ural excavations, as well as in eastern Siberian mines by the mid-19th century.
Official interaction with the population of deep levels ceased, but this doesn't mean all traces of their presence disappeared. Even in our time, researchers, speleologists, geologists, or ordinary people sometimes witness signs of ancient underground communities' activity. Moreover, there are accounts from those who accidentally stumbled into abandoned settlements at lower horizons of old mine workings. Typically, these people describe signs of long-term habitation, worked chambers, remains of ventilation and water supply systems. According to individual sources, special groups of specialists may have maintained informal contacts with descendants of the ancient population of the depths even in the 20th century. There's a theory that geological services in certain regions possess information about the location of these communities, though there's no official confirmation of this. It's believed that the management of Zmenyogorsk mine, as a result of the events of 1743, was able to obtain from the inhabitants of the depths valuable information about the location of rich veins. Also, according to rumors, knowledge was passed on about technologies for reinforcing deep workings and a system of natural voids that allowed speeding up the penetration of new horizons. Perhaps this information formed the basis of the subsequent successes of Altai mines, which in the mid-18th century demonstrated remarkable efficiency. However, almost no documentary confirmation of technology transfer has survived, and such a theory remains more of a legend.
Nevertheless, some engineering solutions used in Altai mines significantly preceded their time and raise questions among modern researchers. The ventilation system for deep horizons had unusual efficiency, providing fresh air even at levels exceeding 300 meters. Methods of supporting vaults using a special load distribution technique amazed even invited Saxon specialists, considered the best mining engineers in Europe. Where this knowledge could have come from remains a mystery, unless you consider the possibility of information exchange with those who had dwelt in the depths for centuries and passed down experience from generation to generation. It's curious that archives contain mentions of strange tools and devices found in sealed galleries during their examination. These items, made from unknown alloys, were purportedly distinguished by remarkable strength, lightness, and durability uncharacteristic of products of that time. Unfortunately, none of these artifacts has survived in museum collections, making it impossible to conduct modern metallurgical analysis. Inventories mention pickaxes of special construction transferred to the Barnau Cabinet of Curiosities, but their trail disappears after the events of the Civil War. Perhaps these tools allowed work in especially hard rock with less effort thanks to thoughtful balance and shape of the working part. The secret of their manufacture may have been lost, along with the disappearance of masters who possessed ancient metalworking technologies. In 1922, under unexplained circumstances, mining engineer Pavel Krotov disappeared along with his assistant Grigory Samoylov in the Rudny Altai region. They headed to the vicinity of old abandoned workings remaining from Demidov's time. The expedition's task was to survey ancient underground structures to assess the possibility of resuming development in this area. The group departed from Barnau on April 23, 1922, equipped with what was considered modern gear for that time. 3 expedition members, including a guide from local residents, never made contact again. The last message was received on April 29th, in which Krotov reported the discovery of interesting finds. In 1923, a search party was organized, but it returned without concrete results. There was talk that the expedition members might have been caught by rock collapses, but this theory was contradicted by traces of an organized camp found on the surface. Personal belongings and some equipment were also discovered, presumably belonging to Krotov. However, his colleague from Tomsk refused to definitively confirm ownership of these items, citing their damaged condition.
Thus, the disappearance of Krotov's expedition remains one of the mysteries of the Altai Mountains. In his notebook, which was found by the search party, several strange notes have been preserved. He mentions a system of passages descending to considerable depth and signs of their artificial origin. The engineer was particularly interested in fragments of stonework executed in a technique uncharacteristic of known historical periods in the region. In his last entry, dated April 28th, he noted his intention to descend into one of the discovered passages for detailed inspection. After this date, the entries break off and the expedition's fate remains unknown. Local residents told stories that legends had long circulated in those places about people who went underground and didn't return. Elders warned that certain entrances into the mountains were best avoided, especially in spring when underground springs awakened. One theory suggests that Krotov and his companions may have wandered too far into the ancient structures and lost their bearings. Another hypothesis proposes that they encountered a collapse that blocked their way to the exit. In 1989, an expedition of Ural speleologists was organized that headed out to investigate underground cavities in the Charish River region. Interest in this area arose after local hunters reported strange sinkholes and mountain entrances that appeared after a strong earthquake. These formations represent a branching network of natural and presumably man-made passages descending to considerable depth. This territory is located in inaccessible mountainous terrain, which has always created the main problem for full study of these structures. According to local legends, one of the nearest settlements in ancient times posted guards at the entrances to these underground spaces. The purpose of the guard was to prevent outsiders from penetrating inside and learning the ancient secret of the settlement hidden there. Legends say that remnants of some ancient people took refuge there, escaping persecution many centuries ago. Of course, the current inhabitants of surrounding villages are unlikely to be direct heirs of those legendary builders. However, connection with ancient legends in these places is preserved and passed down from generation to generation with surprising detail. It's noteworthy that Russian prospectors as early as the beginning of the 18th century recorded entrances to underground structures on one of the mountains revered by the local population, located at an elevation of about 3,800 meters above sea level.
These entrances and the fact they were blocked by massive stone blocks were reported to mining authorities. However, more detailed information couldn't be found in available archives. Upon reaching the indicated underground cavities, speleologists equipped with modern gear were able to confirm that the caves had unusual beauty. Sections were encountered where vaults were decorated with natural mineral formations, shimmering in various shades in the light of directed powerful lamps. In individual chambers, streams and strange reddish vegetation adapted to underground living conditions were discovered. Nowhere were obvious traces of recent human presence or prolonged habitation found in these places. Unexpectedly, the research group's path was blocked by a massive stone slab they discovered at approximately 65 meters depth. It had a clearly worked, smooth surface that immediately attracted the specialists' attention. Using a winch device, the group managed to shift the slab aside, opening a passage further. After this, they determined that the slab was part of a certain stone mechanism that ensured the opening and closing of the passage to deeper levels.
The discovered passage descended at an angle of approximately 15 degrees and represented a clearly man-made tunnel about 3 meters wide. Its floor was laid with stone slabs, tightly fitted to each other, forming a smooth surface without a single gap. Along both sides, along the walls, stretched groove-like depressions of regular shape, about 10 centimeters deep and 15 wide. Expedition participants unanimously concluded that these grooves were used as guides for some transport device, possibly on wheels or runners. On the surface of individual slabs, images were carved resembling stylized birds with outstretched wings and long tails. The drawings were executed in deep relief technique with elaboration of the finest details of plumage and distinguished by high execution quality, clearly belonging to the hand of an experienced master. The expedition couldn't survey the entire length of the tunnel at that time due to limitations in time, provision supplies, and lighting batteries. Nevertheless, even the explored section of 1.5 kilometers made an indelible impression on all participants with its scale and execution quality. Information about the find quickly spread in professional circles, arousing keen interest among geologists, archaeologists, and historians. 3 years later, in 1992, a joint expedition was organized with the participation of specialists from the Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography, as well as the Mining University.
This expanded group conducted detailed examination of the discovered tunnel and established its basic parameters. The length of the artificial passage was about 8.5 kilometers, after which it descended into a water mass. The water in the flooded section had a characteristic salty taste, indicating its connection with ancient marine deposits or underground salt springs. Moreover, the water-filled section of the tunnel was located below modern sea level by approximately 9 meters. Scientists didn't have the necessary technical capabilities to fully investigate the flooded part at that time. Special diving and underwater equipment was required, which the expedition didn't have at its disposal. Nevertheless, the discoveries already made represented enormous scientific value. Specialists in the region's ancient history put forward a hypothesis that the tunnel was constructed long before the appearance of historical cultures known to us. Thus, the theory of builders belonging to an unknown, highly developed civilization that existed in these places thousands of years ago doesn't seem incredible. In addition, images of bird-like creatures on stone slabs aren't characteristic of traditional cultures of the region, which adds mystery to the entire find.
An attempt was made to discover the opposite exit from the tunnel on the other side of the mountain massif. Researchers studied the territory among the spurs of adjacent ridges, but nothing could be found. Perhaps the exit was located in an inaccessible place or was hidden under later geological deposits. It also wasn't excluded that it could have been flooded by waters of one of the mountain lakes as a result of relief changes. In 1995, a new research group planned to pass through the tunnel again for even more detailed study. The goal was to examine the maximum possible section, take precise measurements, and collect material samples for analysis. However, it turned out that in the system of natural caves that served as access to the artificial tunnel, a major collapse had occurred. A huge mass of collapsed stones and rock completely blocked the possibility of re-entry. The causes of the collapse remained unclear. Perhaps these were natural geological processes. Nevertheless, access to one of the region's most intriguing archaeological finds was closed.
Returning to the finds of the Zmaynogorsk expedition of 1743, it's worth noting several important details recorded in Superintendent Bayer's report. He mentioned that in one of the chambers, remains of a lighting system were found, represented by niches in the walls with traces of prolonged burning. It's noteworthy that there was practically no soot on the vaults, indicating either the use of special fuel or the presence of effective ventilation that removed combustion products. In another place, the commission recorded fragments of a water supply system, channels carved in stone with traces of mineral deposits, characteristic of prolonged water flow. The quality of stoneworking amazed even experienced mining masters. Walls were leveled so carefully that they created the impression of a polished surface. Special interest was aroused by strange signs carved in stone in several places, resembling writing but not corresponding to any known writing system of that era. Bayer ordered drawings made of these signs, but they haven't been preserved in the archives, possibly lost during one of the chancellery fires. The report also mentioned the finding of several metal objects, heavily corroded but preserving a shape reminiscent of tools of unknown purpose. These artifacts were sent to St. Petersburg for study, but their further fate is unknown. All these details indicate that the inhabitants of underground levels possessed a developed culture and technologies, allowing them to create comfortable conditions for prolonged residence at depth.
Archaeological research of recent decades in the Altai territory has revealed a number of cultures demonstrating a high level of development in the fields of metallurgy and construction. The Afanasevo culture, which existed about 5,000 years ago, left behind impressive stone structures and evidence of developed copper metallurgy. The Andronovo culture of the Bronze Age demonstrated a high level of metal processing and creation of complex composite products. The Pazyryk culture of the early Iron Age, known for its burial mounds with mummified remains, showed the presence of developed technologies in various fields. It's noteworthy that all these cultures also left behind traces of underground and semi-underground dwellings, especially characteristic of the winter period. Perhaps the tradition of underground construction in Altai has much more ancient roots, going back to epochs about which we have practically no written evidence. It's possible that the discovered tunnels and galleries are the legacy of one of these ancient cultures that reached the peak of its development and for some reasons disappeared or transformed. Climate changes, military conflicts, epidemics, or resource depletion could have led to decline and gradual abandonment of underground settlements. The remaining small population groups could have preserved knowledge of these structures' existence and continued to use them on a limited scale. It was precisely with them that Russian prospectors in the 18th century could have made contact, discovering traces of a much more ancient and developed civilization.
In recent years, new technologies have emerged that could help in studying inaccessible sections of ancient tunnels without risk to researchers and damage to artifacts. Ground-penetrating radar scanning allows detecting voids and structures at depths up to 50 meters without resorting to excavation or drilling. LiDAR aerial surveying can detect terrain anomalies indicating the presence of underground structures even under a layer of vegetation or later deposits. Underwater robotics opens possibilities for investigating flooded tunnel sections using remotely operated vehicles equipped with high-resolution cameras and various sensors. Modern material dating methods such as radiocarbon analysis, thermoluminescence, and uranium-thorium method allow determining with high accuracy the age of organic remains, ceramics, and mineral deposits. Analysis of metal and alloy composition by mass spectrometry methods can reveal technologies used by ancient masters and even determined ore sources. Three-dimensional laser scanning allows creating detailed digital models of underground spaces with millimeter precision for subsequent study without the need for repeated descents. Unfortunately, application of these advanced methods requires significant funding, which isn't always possible to obtain, especially for research in remote, inaccessible areas.
Many promising research projects remain unrealized due to lack of funds, bureaucratic obstacles, or absence of interest from potential sponsors. Nevertheless, enthusiasts continue work hoping that sooner or later funding will be obtained and answers to accumulated questions about the origin and purpose of Altai's ancient underground structures. The history of Zmenogorsk mine and adjacent territories holds many more secrets awaiting their researchers and enthusiasts ready to devote time to studying archives. Documents from the Kolivan-Voskresensky factory's holdings, stored in the State Archive of Altai Krai, contain mentions of strange finds at deep horizons that require additional study. Many of these materials still haven't been introduced into scientific circulation, remain poorly studied, or aren't properly described in catalogs at all. Each new expedition to these places, whether professional archaeologists or groups of amateur speleologists, brings both answers to old questions and generates new mysteries requiring explanation. Perhaps in the future, with technology development and emergence of new research methods, it will be possible to obtain a more complete picture of what's hidden in the depths of the Altai Mountains. The underground galleries of Zmenogorsk, according to 19th century technical plans, descend to a depth of more than 420 meters, forming a 14-level system connected by vertical shafts and inclined drifts. However, according to some data, even deeper levels exist, not accounted for in official plans, access to which was lost back in the mid-19th century. These lower levels could have been created much earlier than the main developments of the 18th century and represent special interest for researchers of ancient technologies. It's possible that precisely there are located the best preserved traces of those very ancient builders discussed in previous sections. Unfortunately, access to deep horizons is currently difficult due to flooding by groundwater, collapses, and absence of functioning drainage that was dismantled in the mid-20th century. The history of Zmenogorsk mine and adjacent territories holds many more secrets awaiting their researchers and enthusiasts ready to devote time to studying archives. Documents from the Kolivan-Voskresensky factory's holdings, stored in the State Archive of Altai Krai, contain mentions of strange finds at deep horizons that require additional study. Many of these materials still haven't been introduced into scientific circulation, remain poorly studied, or aren't properly described in catalogs at all. Each new expedition to these places, whether professional archaeologists or groups of amateur speleologists, brings both answers to old questions and generates new mysteries requiring explanation. Perhaps in the future, with technology development and emergence of new research methods, it will be possible to obtain a more complete picture of what's hidden in the depths of the Altai Mountains. The underground galleries of Zmenogorsk, according to 19th century technical plans, descend to a depth of more than 420 meters, forming a 14-level system connected by vertical shafts and inclined drifts. However, according to some data, even deeper levels exist, not accounted for in official plans, access to which was lost back in the mid-19th century. These lower levels could have been created much earlier than the main developments of the 18th century and represent special interest for researchers of ancient technologies. It's possible that precisely there are located the best preserved traces of those very ancient builders discussed in previous sections. Unfortunately, access to deep horizons is currently difficult due to flooding by groundwater, collapses, and absence of functioning drainage that was dismantled in the mid-20th century. Modern research methods such as underwater scanning and robotic systems can help examine flooded sections. Artifacts, tools, or even inscriptions shedding light on the identity and culture of ancient inhabitants could have been preserved there. Perhaps evidence will be discovered about technologies that were used in constructing these grand structures. Each such find could significantly change our understanding of the region's ancient history. It's possible that Altai's underground systems are connected with similar structures in the Urals and other parts of Siberia. If this hypothesis is confirmed, we're dealing with a large-scale project implemented by an ancient civilization across a vast territory. Such an assumption requires serious evidence, but it can't be completely excluded. For now, these underground labyrinths remain one of the most intriguing mysteries of our region. They remind us that history still holds many secrets to be revealed by future generations of researchers. Perhaps someone among you watching this video will become the one who makes a new important discovery in this field.
If you know of similar stories or legends from your locality related to ancient underground structures, it would be extremely interesting to learn about them. Perhaps in your region there are old workings, abandoned caves, or legends about underground settlements. Your testimonies and accounts can help create a more complete picture of this mysterious phenomenon. Folk memory often preserves information that didn't make it into official documents. Share information in the comments. It's truly important for investigating this topic. Every mention, every detail might turn out to be a key to solving ancient mysteries. We'll continue studying the most unusual and little-known pages of our land's history. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new releases about mysterious finds and historical secrets. Hit the like button if you found the topic interesting. It helps develop the project. Thank you for being with us today. See you in the next episodes of The Researcher's Diary.